Ahlan salan fi halaka gedida min hat historian. In this video, I will be talking about a hat that is associated with a certain traditional and romantic image of North Africa, Turkey, and the Middle East. The fez. The fez, also known as a tarboosh, is a brimless cylindrical felt hat, often with a little tassel or a little tab coming out of the top, and is associated in popular culture with Arab lands, even though it was spread by another culture, Turkey. It was part of the military uniforms of many North African countries, or of Muslim or colonial units of major powers. It also has come to be part of the stereotyped Victorian gentleman in leisure outfits, and has been adopted by a society known as the Shriners as part of their regalia. The distant origins of the fez, as is often the case for traditional hats, are somewhat lost in the fog of history. The ancestors of the fez are thought to have originated in ancient Greece, particularly the mountainous regions that are now northern Greece, Albania, and Macedonia. Workers and sailors there wore a pilos or pileus, a conical felt hat without a brim that kept the head warm and was reasonably waterproof, much like the later beret in the Pyrenees. It became popular throughout the Greek world, and spread further after the Roman conquest of Greece. It became famous as a symbol of freedom, as it was an attribute of the goddess Libertas, and was given to free slaves in a ceremony. A famous version of the pileus still used as such a symbol is the Phrygian cap. These Greek and Balkanic origins can still be seen in some tasseled caps still worn in Greece, notably by the Evzons in their dress uniform, or by the Albanian keleche, which strongly resembles the original hat. A variant of the pileus, known as the pileus pannonicus, or Pannonian cap, became the undress hat of the Roman legions sometime in the 3rd century, and from there spread to civilian populations. With its flat top and truncated cone shape, it began to resemble what we now know as a fez. With the splitting of the Roman Empire into West and East, and the subsequent downfall of the Western Roman Empire, the new Byzantine Empire continued many traditions of their predecessors, while the Old West became influenced by the new invaders. The Pannonian cap remained a popular item of headwear throughout Byzantine lands, which included what is now Greece, the Balkans, and Turkey. Other than military wear, a plain version was worn by peasants throughout the empire, and nobles wore other, more embroidered brimless hats of similar origin. This practice continued through the Turkish invasions and fall of Constantinople in 1453. The new Muslim rulers adopted many of the Byzantine style, including in architecture, art, and dress. Thus, the brimless Pannonian cap became a part of the dress of the new invaders. Noblemen would often use it as the centerpiece for their elaborate turbans, while simple workers would wear it plain as they always have. It became fashionable throughout the Ottoman Empire as it spread throughout North Africa. Officials would wear clothing in the Turkish fashion, often including fezes with or without turbans, and from there the local population would imitate them. It is during that time that the fez got its name, as well as the color most often associated with it, red. Up until this period, fezes tend to come in many colors, from undyed off-white to black to brown. However, under the Ottomans, dark red became the color of choice for officials, and the population followed suit. The city of Fez, in what is now Morocco, was the center for the production of crimson dye, which was used to achieve this color. Therefore, many fez makers set up their manufactures there, and those who were elsewhere got their dyed felt from there. Thus, the city became associated with the hat, and the name stuck with it, though it is still often also called a tarboosh in many places in North Africa. The fez continued to grow in popularity, especially as slowly the turban was abandoned. In the early 19th century, Ottoman Sultan Mahmud II embarked on a vast program of modernization of the military and civil services of his empire. He changed the uniforms of his army to resemble those of other European countries, seen then as the peak of modernity. He also had members of his court dress in European fashions, and banned the turban, which was seen as a symbol of Ottoman backwardness. Soon, all members of the upper class followed suit, but one area they had trouble importing European fashion was hats. The brims and visors of European civilian and military hats were seen as incompatible with devout practice of Islam. Indeed, Muslims are required to prostrate themselves with their head touching the ground during their daily prayers, and the hats got in the way of that. The brimless fez was seen as an ideal replacement, as well as a handy national unifier given its association to Turkey. In 1827, the Sultan ordered 50,000 fezes for his troops. and he commanded that all civil and religious leaders of the empire wear the hat in 1829. The fez became firmly associated with the Ottomans at that point, and was seen there as a symbol of modernity and progress. While primarily a Muslim hat, it was worn by the Christian and Jewish populations of the empire as well. The influence of the Ottoman Empire throughout the Muslim world, as the ruler of the holy city of Mecca and the most powerful Muslim nation, meant that Ottoman style spread throughout other countries where Islam dominated. Persia adopted the fez in an effort to modernize its image in the mid-19th century, and the hat spread throughout Muslim populations in what is now Pakistan and India, as a sign of support of the Ottomans and opposition to the British Empire, particularly amongst Muslim nobles. It was introduced from there to Indonesia, where it gained traction amongst sections of the ruling class. In the late 19th century, a romanticized image of Turkey and the Middle East became very fashionable in Europe through the Orientalist movement. Seen as exotic and mysterious, Arab and Turkish motifs and fashions became very popular, with Moorish decorations on furniture and buildings appearing. The fez, virtually inexistent in Europe, became seen as a symbol of this mysterious East, and became fashionable for men to wear one as a smoking cap when relaxing at home, to protect their hair from the smell of smoke. These fezes gave way to softer velvet smoking caps that retained the general shape and tassel of the original, creating the image of the Victorian gentleman seen relaxing in his study in a fez and velvet smoking jacket. It was also at that time that some fraternal orders adopted it, most famously the Shriners, for similar reasons of mystique and romantic exoticism. Ironically, for a hat seen as a symbol of modernity and progress in the early 19th century, it suffered a complete reversal of fortune in Turkey after World War I and the fall of the Ottoman Empire. The new leader of the Turkish Republic, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, wanted to erase the remnants of the old regime and modernize the country, and saw the fez as a backward symbol of Ottoman rule. Citing its Greek origins to appeal to Turkish nationalists, he banned the headgear in 1925. Despite this, it continued to be popular in other formerly Ottoman lands, particularly in North Africa and the Balkans. The fez also has a long history as a military hat. Beyond the Ottoman troops, for which it was the standard headgear for almost a century, it became widespread in European armies for colonial regiments, particularly in Africa. France, Italy, the UK, or Spain all had regiments that wore different variants of the fez as their headgear, possibly most famously the French Zouaves, who wore a soft chechia, but also the Senegalese tirailleurs of the French army, Libyan and Somali units for the Italians, the King's African Rifles for the British, and even Nazi Germany had Muslim SS units recruited in Bosnia wearing fezes in World War II. While distinctive, the fez was not the most practical hat for soldiers, offering little protection from the sun due to its lack of brim, and, with a few exceptions, such as the Greek evzons or the Italian bersaglieri, died out after the end of colonial empires and various revolutions overthrowing old monarchies in Arab countries, as it was seen as a symbol of either colonial oppression or the old regimes. While it was banned in Turkey, the fez continued to be widely worn in North Africa, particularly in the home of its namesake, Morocco, where it became a symbol of resistance against the French in the 1950s, or in Egypt until the overthrow of the monarchy. The fez did not suffer, like other hats that I've covered, from the decline in hat wearing in the 1960s, as the countries it was worn in had different cultural norms from the West, but it could not resist the changing winds of fashion. Like many traditional hats, it became seen as old-fashioned in a world of global trends, and tends to be seen more on older people or the devout. In some countries, as I said, it was also associated with the old regimes and done away with during revolutions. However, it is still highly popular amongst the members of the Moroccan royal court, with the king generally wearing one, as well as Muslim leaders in South Asia. It is also a very popular souvenir in Morocco, with relatively cheap versions being sold to the street vendors in touristy areas. In the West, it is still a handy indicator of Arabness, with characters such as Salah in the Indiana Jones movies, or the Morocco Mole in the Secret Squirrel cartoons both sporting one. The smoking cap version is also sometimes still seen in caricatures evoking refined relaxation, and it is still used by the fraternal orders I mentioned earlier in their regalia and even logos. And it can be used to mark a certain eccentricity, as the 11th Doctor in the series Doctor Who briefly sported one. From an ancient Greek peasant hat to a symbol of Ottoman domination, the fez has had a long journey. And while not as prevalent as it used to be, and sometimes actively fought against, it has refused to disappear. So I hope once again you found this video interesting and will join me again soon for another hat. Until then, I tip my hat to you.